In 1983, a British electronic band called New Order released this single, Blue Monday. This record has since become iconic, not just for its groundbreaking sound, but also for this cryptic cover art, which is completely blank, apart from a coded message. Like many, I decoded this message, but I also cracked the entire code before it was published a few months later, and the code contains an amusing secret, like an Easter egg, one that to this day no one has ever reported until now. I'll show you exactly what I did and what I discovered, because I believe this record, taken together with its artwork, represents not only a band changing their sound, or even music changing, but a change in music culture. In this video, I'll show you how I cracked the Blue Monday code before it was released. It just felt a lot like the ciphers I'd grown up with. How to use it to generate music. What if I use them to make music? And the final amazing secret I discovered. Beautiful gift from the universe that makes you glad to be alive. So this is my pretty beaten up and heavily played copy of Blue Monday. It's not the one with the famous laser cut floppy disk design, but it's the exact copy I bought more than 40 years ago in 1983 when I was 14. I can't remember the exact record shop in London, but it would have been one of the large stores in the centre of town, and I do remember taking the bus home with it in my bag, which was when I decoded the message. Now, I've talked before about how record covers were such an important part of music culture back in the 80s, and Blue Monday is one of those covers that's now impossible to separate from the music. Although, even in the 80s, it was pretty bold to release a record without the title or band name anywhere legible on the cover. You have to remember there was no internet to help you look up details. If you'd only heard the song on the radio, you might not have even been able to find it in a store if you didn't know exactly what you were looking for. In reality, record stores solved this by slipping this record into a separate plastic sleeve with a handwritten sticker that said New Order, Blue Monday. But the design itself felt unapologetically artistic, very anti-commercial, and completely on brand for New Order and their record company, Factory Records. I've been interested in codes and patterns for as long as I can remember. From a very early age, maybe 9 years old, I would pester my mum, who was a maths teacher, endlessly to set me what are called substitution ciphers to crack. A substitution cipher is a very simple form of code, and you just replace every letter of the alphabet with another letter or a symbol. I had a method for cracking those that was pretty crude, but quite effective, at least with the codes that she sent me. I'd counted all of the letters on a few pages of a book and made a tally and ranked them in terms of how often they occurred. So E was the most frequent letter, then A, and I basically then just applied that to the coded messages my mum was sending me. So I looked for the most common letter or symbol in her code, made that an E, second most common, made that an A, and saw how far I got. But I had two more tricks. First was to make educated guesses about partial words, particularly easy words that contained the E's and A's I'd already guessed, like the word and or the word the. And the second was to cheat a bit. Most of the time she included my name, which is 6 letters long and has 2 letters used twice in the first few words, and ended her message with my name for her, which is 5 letters long, one of which is used 3 times. So if I saw coded words that looked like that, I'd immediately guess what they were and have a head start. I now know that this technique is called using a crib or cribbing, and it's enormously helpful in cracking codes. So when I saw this cover art to Blue Monday, I just immediately recognized that it was probably a substitution cipher with a coded message. Why? Well, it's kind of hard to say, but probably these black squares looked a bit like the spaces between words. That's the first clue. And then when you look more closely and you sort of see letters repeating, it just felt a lot like the ciphers I'd grown up with. I was obviously buying the record anyway, but the idea of also having a coded message for me felt really awesome. However, regardless of any code, this artwork just felt exactly right for the record and for the time. Here's why. New Order was formed by the remaining members of Joy Division, one of the most influential bands to emerge after the UK punk scene. After the tragic death of their singer, Ian Curtis, the band continued under a new name, New Order. Bernard Sumner, who had been Joy Division's guitarist, took over as lead vocalist. Peter Hook remained on bass, Stephen Morris continued on drums, and they added a new member, Gillian Gilbert, on keyboards. The New Order's first single, Ceremony, was a straightforward re-record of a Joy Division song, and so many people thought the band would just continue in the same musical direction. But that's not what happened at all. In fact, the fundamental nature of their music changed. They embraced electronic instruments and production hard, with much of the music being driven by computers and computer sequences. Even though they still had a real drummer, bass, and guitarist, this now felt like a very modern electronic rock band. Peter Hook's distinctive bass guitar remained a constant, but the overall sound became a lot more Kraftwerk and a lot less like post-punk rock. And that's why this artwork for Blue Monday made so much sense. It spoke to computers, discipline, grids, patterns, and a new aesthetic, quite literally a new order. So as a visual signal that the band had changed, it couldn't have been more on point. This stark cover graphic with the coded message was a symbol of the band's shift from post-punk to electronica and music culture's shift from the analog 70s to the futuristic computer-driven 1980s. Okay, so let me show you how to decode the message, and I'm going to do it in exactly the way and pretty much the same speed that I did it back in '83 on the way home on the bus. So firstly, you just sort of scan by eye, because it's quite a short message, and you see whether there are any sort of commonly used symbols. You've got this blue cyan square that leaps out. There are 5 of them. You've got 4 green squares, and those seem to be the common ones. So, all right, let's set the blue ones to E and the green ones to the A. Those are the 2 most common letters in order. I wouldn't normally expect that trick to work, by the way, on such a short message, but, you know, let's do that. Now, at this stage, I don't even know, I don't really know which way up it is or what the front cover is, but I do notice that I've got this 3-letter sequence that starts with an A. So what if that were an and? Exactly what I used to do with my mum. And then, of course, I've also got my crib, because I'm expecting to find words like blue, Monday, new, and order. And look here, you got a 6-letter word with ND in the middle, and it's preceded by a 4-letter word that ends in an E. So that's probably Blue Monday, isn't it? And even without solving any more of this, if it says Blue Monday and, well, maybe they're going to talk about the B-side. So I'll pull out the B-side. And it's The Beach. It's a track called The Beach. Okay, so I turn it around, and I'm expecting to see a the, and I haven't got a the. I've got this with an E in the middle, and I've got this with an E at the start. Then I realised, oh yeah, you turn it over, don't you? So look, there is the. So that's a T, an H, and an E, and that means that's an H, and look, there you go, and it's The Beach. And that's got an E in the middle and an N, which we know from the and, so that's new. And then this is obviously order. So by this stage, I've decoded, you know, kind of most of the message, which is Blue Monday and The Beach, new order. That was easy. The only thing left was this first word with AC in the middle. And I remember thinking, and it was inspired, oh, that's got to be the FAC code. The fact codes were catalogue numbers of factory records, which was New Order's independent and highly artistic record label, assigned to record releases, the occasional gig, and even the famous nightclub called the Hacienda that they co-owned with New Order. Lots of fans knew about the fact code, but it definitely felt exciting to guess this. So I pulled out the record again to look up the number, and here it is. Fact 73. So that single symbol with two colours must mean 73. Don't really know why it meant 73, but that's clearly fact 73, Blue Monday, and that's probably a printing error, I guessed at the time. The Beach New Order. Great. Decoded the message. What I really wanted to do was see if I could crack the entire code and create a key for the entire alphabet and number system, just like I did with my mum. So that's what I set about doing as soon as I got home. The first thing I did when I got home with the record was just to draw out the alphabet and fill in the letters that I'd cracked so far. That's when I noticed two things. First, it looked like the single block colours, the squares with a colour in them, were being used at the beginning of the alphabet. And second, it looked like there was a clear continuation pattern to the code. So it looked like once the initial block colours had been used up, the code then switched to combinations by taking the first of the solid colours, which was green for A, and combining that then one by one with the block colours in sequence until those were used up. Then you switch to the second, yellow, and so on and so forth until you finish the alphabet, which you do sort of midway through the yellows. And because I cracked this pattern, this continuation pattern, I was therefore able to figure out what a lot of the remaining letters must be, even though they hadn't been used explicitly on this record cover. But I still had a few things left to crack, and I still didn't really understand why this single symbol, the light purple over the dark purple, was 73. And then I had a breakthrough. Again, I'm holding the sleeve wrong. It needs to be rotated. I couldn't believe it. I had it wrong again. The numbers 1 through 9 and 0 also corresponded to what I had now discovered were 10 block colours. And to make 73, you simply took the colours for 7 and 3 and combined them with the white line. And I guessed this because I noticed that the colour for 3 would then be the same colour as the colour for C, which is the third letter of the alphabet. And this was really helpful because it meant that the colour for 7, dark purple, must then be the colour for G, the seventh letter of the alphabet, and it meant I could also solve Q. So I've seen people on the internet say things like, for the life of me, I still don't understand why the numbers are written upside down. Because if you hold it like this, it looks like 73 is being written as 3/7. Well, the answer is, you're holding the sleeve wrong. It's like this. So at this point, I've solved the entire code and the way it works, apart from I'm missing a single colour. That colour is used in the number 9 and the letters I and S. But this is still technically a complete solution because since there's only one colour missing, I could crack any message, because if I ever saw a message with an extra colour, then I'd know that that was the missing colour. And I was so proud of having come up with a solution that I actually carried around my key to the completed Blue Monday code on a scrap of paper in my right jeans pocket. And then a couple of months later, there I was, back in the same record shop. And by this time, the album Power, Corruption and Lies had been released. And I found myself doing what I always did, taking out the actual vinyl in the record store to kind of get as close as I could to the product without, actually buying it. And there was the key to the Blue Monday code, laid out as a graphic. What was the final missing color in the Blue Monday code? Well, in a wonderful irony, it was blue. Isn't that nice? Especially because I bet the coincidence wasn't intended. It's just one of those truly amazing, beautiful gifts from the universe that makes you glad to be alive. The only color from the code not used on the Blue Monday artwork was blue itself. Only because the text didn't happen to contain the letters I or S or the number 9. I can't really describe how I felt, but it was pretty weird. There was a rush of adrenaline, but it was such an intensely private moment of elation because no one else knew I'd cracked the code anyway. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one. Others around the world must have cracked it too and felt the same thing. But this was before the internet and online communities. This is a wonderful design that represents not only the song, but also a band changing and what was happening generally in music and music culture. It is a record sleeve of godlike genius. And since I'm in the mood to push things a little further, I asked myself a question. Instead of using those 10 colors in a repeating pattern to make letters and numbers, what if just for fun, I use them to make musical notes? What if I took a 10-note scale, because there were 10 colors, and every time the pattern cycled round, we cycled in the musical scale to the next octave? There's no reason to think this is going to sound good, but what would it sound like? Well, some of you may have guessed, you've actually been listening to it. All of the incidental and background music in this video was created by doing exactly that. Each of the 8 words, Fact 73, Blue Monday, and The Beach New Order, made its own melody, and those are what I've been playing. So I'll play you out with those little melody snippets exposed, with the codes that accompany them and the musical notes up on the screen, so you can see how it works. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.